I have some books here that I think will make you think again. I think we've lost the plot on thinking recently. I feel like I live a lot of my day, and I see a lot of other people live their days without thinking about them or thinking about anything but what's right in front of them, really. These are books that I don't see a lot that made me think about things. Hopefully will make you think about things as well. So first up is the Tatami Galaxy by Tomihiki Morimi. So this is a Japanese novel which was translated into English, and you can probably tell by the cover it looks a little hectic. It's not as hectic as you would think it is. It's about a college student who's hurtling through 4 parallel realities. It sort of ties in with the butterfly effect in the way that this college student goes through 4 different parallel realities that are different based on one choice that he made in college. I feel that it's something everybody can relate to because I feel like we've all made choices, which we spend a lot of time thinking about. A lot of us are really entrenched in the past. I think a lot of people think about what might have been very often. I've known a lot of people who have spent an inordinate amount of time thinking about a single choice that they made in the past or multiple choices, and how if they had only made a different choice on this or that matter that it might have changed their entire life. You know, maybe you didn't like your college major and you think if you would have chosen something else your life would have been completely different. You would be happy now. You would be better off for making a different choice than you did. And this book is for all of those people who are sort of stuck in the past and reliving the choices that they made, because it really hits home that no matter what choices you make, really not much is going to change because you are still who you are. You know, maybe you'll have different books on your shelves in a different reality. Maybe you'll have a couple of different memories, but largely you remain who you are in every reality. Sort of like that line in Faust from Mephistopheles, you are in the end what you are. It also by the end sort of solidifies the idea that you're never going to be happy. No matter what reality you're in, you'll always be thinking about a different one. In this reality, you might be thinking about reality number 4, but reality number 4's you is thinking about how much better it might have been to be you. I recommend this because I think it's something that each of us has gone through, which is drowning in the past and unable to be happy in your reality. Moving on, Don't Be Startled. This is Mademoiselle de Maupin by Théophile Gautier. I really like this writer because I think he explores different facets of the male and the female psyche. I think the beginning is more funny than anything. This is written by a French author in the 1800s. Very Oscar Wilde style writing and themes. It's essentially about a young man who is lamenting pretty much everything in typical Victorian fashion, is just absolutely unsatisfied with his life. This is probably one of the best books to pull quotes from. His views are really comedically problematic in today's society. What are some of his hotter takes? If you're not a beautiful woman, you should probably just KYS. This tension between the eye of my soul and an invisible object has distorted my vision. I cannot tell what is there because I have been gazing so long at what is not there. I spent too much time listening to myself living and thinking. I hear my arteries throbbing, my heart beating. I pay a great deal of attention to every passing thought. I pull it out as it floats through its cloudy vapor and give it a shape. Were I to be more active, I should not take any notice of all these trivia, and should not have the time to examine my soul under a microscope all day long the way I do. You know, these sound really profound. It's largely, as I remember it, him lamenting for a good 100 pages how he cannot find a woman and he would be very happy if he were to have a woman. It might sound like a particular kind of drudgery to drag yourself through 100 pages of a young man's lamentations, but I promise you it's absolutely worth it for the comedic undertone. A lot of this is just, he has his moments, but largely it's funny to watch. Do you know when some people are so depressed that it is funny? That where his woes are just so repetitive, he's able to twist his sort of mundane feelings of I am lonely into enormously profound prose in which he makes it seem as if it has so much more gravity than it does. That's the talent of a poet, I think, is to dramatize the quotidian. Who says quotidian? I promise it's more than just lamentations, okay? It actually gets a lot more interesting. So it's 100 pages of him lamenting his situation and how he doesn't know what he's looking for, but he'll know when he finds it. And I think that's something that also a lot of people can relate to. I think there's a lot of people who want something more, but are not exactly sure what that is. I joke, but it's a very painful feeling. It does offer some some poetic insight and possibly relatable texts to maybe feel as if you yourself have been seen through the emotions of this young man from the 1800s who is suffering the same mental ailments as we are in current day. By the end of the book, things change a lot. We actually also get the perspective of a woman. Her point of view is equally as interesting. I mean, so we spend 100 pages of the beginning of the book of this man pathetically lamenting his loneliness and really only thinking about himself and sort of using women as an object, and he's kind of completely fine with this. I mean, he laments and wants a true love, but I don't think he really knows what love is, and we sort of learn about her life through letters to her friend. So there's a couple scenes when she's really young that she comes into contact with men. Essentially, the way that men behave with other males is very different from what they present to females, and the way that she sees them act and the things that they talk about when a female isn't in their presence is completely different. So I'm going to read a couple of things that she finds. There was one thing which worried me mainly, and that was what men said and did among themselves after they left their salons and their theaters. I suspected that they had a lot of faults and a dark side to their characters that was carefully hidden from view, and that we really ought to know about. Sometimes when young men came to the house, I hid behind a curtain and spied on them from a distance, and I thought I could detect something dishonorable and cynical in their behavior, a crude indifference, or a fierce self-absorption, which was not evident the moment they were inside, and which they seemed to shed like magic as they were about to enter a room. Both young and old, they all seemed to me to be adopting a uniformly conventional mask, conventional sentiments, and a conventional tone of voice when they were in the presence of women. I listened and watched. Though my eyes were lowered, I saw everything to the right, left, behind, and in front of me. I wanted to study men in depth, dissecting them fiber by fiber with my relentless scalpel, and holding them down alive and kicking on the dissecting table. Women, I am sorry to say, have only read the novel, not the true history of men's lives. You would think they were another species, and there is not the slightest intellectual connection between the two sexes. The virtues of the one are the vices of the other, and what is admired in men is shameful in women. So she goes on to sort of lament that men are able to have these conversations and that they're able to sort of roam the world freely, while women are, in essence, vegetables in a garden rotting away and forced to learn these parlor tricks in order to win men over. I think it has some really great quotes. It has a lot of drama, a lot of really questionable ethics and morals that I think will get anybody who reads it thinking about their views on relationships and objectification of just people in general. There's another book that is The Prestige by Christopher Priest. This book is about two magicians in the late 1800s who were rivals. It's written so well from the point of view of how a rivalry is formed, how core values can clash and create enemies for not just for life but for generations down the line. It's a story about enemies. Something I've been thinking about recently a lot is enemies, and I know there's this whole thing going around online about I have no enemies mindset. I actually don't subscribe to that. I want an enemy. Look how much fun these people in the books and the movies are having, and they have an arch enemy, a mortal enemy, and look what they become. A lot of the characters that we know and love have an enemy, and they become goated, as the kids say, by virtue of having an enemy, by being pushed to become greater. In a way that I think you don't have an enemy in a 9-to-5 office job. Back to business. It's told through diary entries, which I think are pretty neato. To quote the great Alexander Hamilton, what is a legacy? The thing is, with a legacy, it's not only about you. Legacy is something that I think a lot about, and that is almost in a way paralyzing as well. Their feud gets passed on in a Romeo and Juliet-esque situation in which their remaining family members after they pass keep up the feud. That's all I can really say about this book. You're just gonna have to take it on good faith that we're experiencing a real issue here. She's having a good time. Each of them is in a battle to reveal the other's secrets, take his fame. So there's one trick that one of the magicians does that the other cannot figure out how he does it. And it's sort of a point of obsession for him, which is also another theme in this book, is absolute obsession. So yeah, there's a lot of different themes in this book. Obsession, rivalry, legacy, and I think anybody who reads it will start thinking about maybe what it is to have a legacy and what that means for your descendants, for posterity. It also sort of ties in with the paralysis of legacy, which is if you can't decide on what you want your legacy to be, then I suppose your legacy becomes nothing. Anyway, I'm going to bring up another one now. I need you to trust me with this one. This is The Thrilling Adventures of Lovelace and Babbage by Sidney Padua. This is my biggest hear me out. This is a graphic novel, and it looks okay. I know how this looks. This is more history themed as well as technology themed. Charles Babbage essentially created the first computer, and Ada Lovelace is hailed as the world's first computer programmer. They were Victorian thinkers, mathematicians, inventors, and Charles Babbage would host these parties at which he would invite loads of people, loads of intellectuals, and talk about his new creations. And he was a very idiosyncratic individual, very unique. And Ada Lovelace attended one of these events when she was, I believe, 18, 19. She was the daughter of Lord Byron, who was the famous poet. Her mother absolutely despised her father. He had left her, so she raised Ada to be the opposite of a poet. She raised her to be everything that Lord Byron was not. She had her trained in science and mathematics, so Ada really took to mathematics. She honestly was an artist in mathematics. So she goes to, when she's 18, 19, goes to one of these parties that Charles Babbage is hosting, and he shows off one of his new machines. She's absolutely captivated. And so they start working together as this duo, and she sort of provides the mathematics. She works out these crazy advanced formulas. He provides the enthusiasm and the practical skill and know-how to actually engineer these devices and make them work, and to make blueprints for them. One of his inventions, the difference engine, never came to fruition, but it was enormous, and he made blueprints for it. Yes, this is a graphic novel based on the two of them, and it's fictional. It makes their inventions and time together into these really interesting adventures that are kind of bigger than life, and it's based on fact, but it is fiction. And then there's Queen Victoria in it, okay? What I really love about this might look really scary to some people, but I swear it's really fun to read, okay? Let me go to that same page. And underneath of it, these footnotes actually tell you what the real history was, or they tell you little facts about them that are real, or something that's not included in here. So what did I have tabbed? So it's like you get to read a fun little comic while learning. Kind of fun. So this is Queen Victoria sitting down in a chair, and then there's a little note at the bottom. It says, Empress Eugenie, who married Napoleon III, observed that when Victoria sat down, she never looked behind her for a chair, for she did not doubt that one would appear beneath her. Here's a panel in which you can see Ada going into this larger-than-life engine, trying to fix stuff. Sign keeps popping up that says, wrong, wrong, wrong. So obviously the calculations have gone wrong, and there's a little note at the bottom that says, did Babbage really design an error pop-up for his engine that said wrong? Of course he did. So then it includes a little snippet from a primary source from Charles Babbage that says, if, however, any mistake had been made by the attendant who was working the machine, and a wrong logarithm had been accidentally given to the engine, it would have discovered the mistake and have rung a louder bell to call the attention of its guide, who, on looking at the proper place, would see a plate above the logarithm he had just put in with the word wrong engraved upon it. So Ada often had to fix programming issues or solve issues in Babbage's machines. So here's sort of a dramatized version of her trying to fix one of the machines and swearing over the phone at him. So the note on the bottom says, Ada Lovelace really did swear while debugging, and that it includes a quote from her notes where she says, for it is damnably troublesome work and it plagues me. I think history class misses a lot of this, which is really bringing history to life. It's not just a dry history book on Ada Lovelace and Charles Babbage. It actually shows you dramatized stuff about what they went through and their adventures together, but it all ties back into some sort of truth, and there are notes at the bottom for you to distinguish what is the truth, and if you have any questions, then you can refer to that, or if there are any thoughts that pop up in your mind about, was this real, or did Victoria ever look behind her when she was sitting to make sure there was a chair? No, she didn't. That's stuff that I think you might not learn otherwise, and it's a really clever way to fit it into a book. The last book is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It's a classic that people hear of, but they don't read it. I haven't heard, I don't think I've ever met somebody else who's read this book. I feel like it's a really profound book because it goes into the aestheticism that was rampant in the late 1800s. Oh, there's still a censor in it. Oh my god, don't listen. Why would you do this? Oscar Wilde is also just another author whose prose is just absolutely beautiful. It's about Dorian Gray who gets a portrait painted of him. And he is this young, beautiful, honestly very hedonistic young man. And he wants to, in effect, live this way forever. So he puts out a wish that if only this painting could instead take my age for me, could take on the weight of my sins. Because he's out here, I mean, this boy's partying every night. He's sleeping with boys. He's out here drinking. He's out here smoking. The 7 sins, put me down for all 7, you know? He has this wish that if only every sin that I committed could be shown not on my face and not in my soul, but on this painting. This actually happens. The painting begins to represent his soul, the state of his soul. You see the state of his soul just deteriorating and withering. This painting of him growing old and haggard and deformed and absolutely hideous. It's a really great perspective and commentary on the late 1800s, this hedonistic, popular, pessimistic view of the world and this cult of beauty, in a sense. But those are 5 books that I think will get anybody who reads them thinking. They stretch across a wide variety of themes that I think will maybe not cure the brain rot, but maybe plant a little sprout in your head, which will hopefully grow. And read books which nurture the little sprout in your head. That's all. Bye!